Helen Arvanitakis is spearheading a new design ecosystem based in Greenwich London, comprising of 16 buildings designed by 8 architectural practices. Each designed to support the business needs of creatives post-pandemic. Helen's a consultant for creative businesses on all areas outside of designing, and I'm interested in her views on the business practices adopted within the design and creative sector. Helen, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Are you first generation Greek, or were you born here?
I was born here, yeah.
Okay. Where are your parents from?
Well, it's only my father who's Greek, so I'm only half Greek. Makes me a bit of a fraud, doesn't it?
Still good.
Still counts.
Where's he from?
His family's from 2 different islands, so an island close to Italy called Zakynthos, and then an island close to Turkey called Samos.
Okay, you've got the most incredible surname. What icebreaker have you brought today to the studio?
So today I have brought a book which is called Decorative Art, the Studio Yearbook. I don't know, should I put that up to the camera?
Yeah.
Ta-da! And this is a really important book for me.
Why?
So it dates from 1951 to 52, and it was actually my grandfather's book, and my grandfather was an architect. And he had a plot of land outside of Liverpool where he decided to design and build his own house in the 50s. And he bought himself I've actually got a few other of these books. He bought himself a few of them to pick furniture and other things from for the family home, what was going to be the family home. And I absolutely love not only all of the products in it, which I think are completely fantastic, but also the fact that some of those things you could flick through the book and then walk around my grandparents' house and see the products up on the walls or, around the dining table.
Isn't that nostalgic? So this business has been in your blood?
Yeah, a long time.
What a beautiful book. Gosh, this is very precious.
Isn't it fabulous? Yeah.
Gorgeous. And I'm guessing he was quite progressive in the self-build arena.
I think he probably was. I mean, I always really enjoyed staying in the house, and I didn't really understand why as a child. But, looking back on it now, the fact that it was absolutely flooded with light and it felt super contemporary in the fact that the spaces were all really quite open plan. And in 50s Britain, nothing was like that. It was, Victorian and dark and dingy kind of post-war environment. But I think, he was really inspired by the work that he was doing at the time. So he was building a lot of schools and hospitals and other buildings in the north of England post-war. And I think having all of those progressive ideas at work really influenced what he wanted to do for his own home.
Fascinating. So it's design has been in your blood.
Yes, many generations.
So how did you come to do what you do now? What's your trajectory through education and work into the design arena?
So, I suppose I could go all the way back to university. I came out of university and slightly accidentally landed a job working in a marketing role, actually, for what was then called a web design agency, and is now, a digital agency. And I really enjoyed being in that creative environment, but I had absolutely no interest in the internet and websites as they were in those days. It all felt quite sort of unlovable in a way. And so I then went to go and work at the BBC, and at that time they were building lots of big, exciting developments. So they were doing loads of construction in White City. They were rebuilding part of Broadcasting House in W1, and lots of big developments up in Manchester and Glasgow and various other locations. And that really excited me, these big development projects. So I thought, right, I'm going to go back, try and get myself through education a bit closer to the world of design and see if there was an alternative career for me that way.
So you always knew that you wanted to work in design?
I think probably from that moment, I knew that I wanted to be involved in probably not a creative role, but something to do with the physical environment. So probably more architecture, interior design, development, that kind of thing.
Because here at Designerati, we have a big community, and the people that I interview are always fascinating. We have industrial designers, product designers, interior designers, lighting designers, and I've not met someone who works on the business side, who consults to the design industry. So I'm fascinated about your role and what it involves and how you're experienced.
Yeah. So I think what struck me quite early on, working with creative businesses, is that the creative industries tends to be one where people who are exceptional at the creative don't always come with great business skills. And I think that's completely, valid and fair to be not brilliant at business necessarily if you are completely fantastic at something creative. And it felt to me like I probably could have forged some sort of career in design, but I reckon I would never have got beyond detailing toilets because I don't think I'm that creative.
Which is a great job.
It's a great job, absolutely, and very valuable because we all use toilets all the time. But I don't think I would have added a massive amount of value. But what I did realise was that actually by understanding the creative process really well, I could add a lot more value in the areas that I am good at, which is basically the more commercial side. And so I was able to create a career path really in working in creative businesses, but not on the creative stuff, on the business side of stuff.
At what point in your life did you realise actually that you were interested in the business side of business? I
think it was probably when I was working at Tom Dixon. So through my master's degree, I met Tom and managed to stay in touch with him. And at the time, I think he was still at Habitat. He was still at Habitat. And as through the process of setting up his own business, I stayed in touch with him. And he was being offered many more opportunities through interior design, through designing environments, than he was making through his own product range. And I could see that there were lots of different ways that he could apply his brand, as it was at that point, was still quite small, for lots of different clients and really leverage a lot of benefit for the wider studio and, in fact, for the product business. And so really at that point, I think I realised that I understood how we could get better value from the creative business for the bottom line of the whole company, really.
Mm-hmm. So you started off as a consultant for one of the world's most famous product designers.
Yeah.
How was it working in that environment with somebody that's notoriously creative?
Yeah. I mean, at that time, so when I first started working with Tom Dixon at the studio, I think I was something like the 17th employee. It was a very small business. And it was really exciting and a bit crazy. And there was an awful lot of very, very talented people there who worked incredibly hard, who really managed to make that company totally excel. And when you're working with someone like Tom, who's got an extraordinary amount of brilliant ideas all the time, actually it was more about trying to keep up and not do too much, grow the business in the right kind of way, as opposed to taking everything on and going wild. So it was a very exciting time. I think one of the most valuable things that I took from it was all of the brilliant people that we got to meet through the process. And that's a combination of the people who came to work in the studio, just totally fantastic talent, but also the clients and the wider network that you get to meet when you work with someone who's well known in the industry. You really do get to meet an awful lot of brilliant and extraordinary businesses and individuals. How did that
opportunity come around with Tom Dixon?
So I did a master's degree at St. Martin's, and the degree culminated in a final project, and I wanted to create a business plan for my final project. You could see already that there was this kind of desire to do something business rather than design. And I kept, at that time, every morning when I come outside my flat, there would be a new bit of furniture that someone had dumped on the street. And I kept thinking, these are really great bits of furniture that people are just throwing away, and they're getting rid of them because they don't like the upholstery or or the webbing has sagged, or there's something wrong with it that no longer serves that particular purpose for the person who owned that piece of furniture. And so my idea suddenly was formed around writing a business plan that would look to upcycle, as we now call it, furniture. And this was an awfully long time ago. There really weren't that many people doing it then.
You're ahead of your time, like your granddad.
I think maybe I was, although I didn't have the courage to follow through, but that's a story for another time. But I started to look into how this could work. And in the process, I thought it'd be really good to talk to people who have made successful products or businesses out of waste, basically. And of course, at the time, one of the big names that came up was Tom Dixon, because his name was he made his name really through creating metal furniture that was welded bits of waste, basically. And
I had no idea. I thought Tom Dixon became famous for his iconic lights with the copper in.
That's what he's most well known for now. But prior to that, he was, I think, the creative director at Habitat, the high street furniture business. And then before that, the reason that he got that job was because he'd made this extraordinary pieces of furniture using bits of waste metal that he welded together. I mean, it was almost more like art, actually, rather than furniture. So I thought I would pick up the phone to him, as you do, and say, "Excuse me, I'm a student. Would you mind awfully if I could come and talk to you about waste furniture?"
That takes confidence.
Yeah, remarkably, he said, "Yeah, of course you can. Pop into Habitat and we'll..." So I picked his brains and I got loads of brilliant ideas from him. And I obviously quoted him in my dissertation and got top marks for it. I spoke to some other people as well who are well known.
This takes a level of confidence just for some rookie from from straight out of school to call somebody like Tom Dixon.
Well, it does, but you don't. I think, if you don't try, you don't get, right. And I've thought that throughout my whole life. If you don't ask the question, actually also if you do ask the question, they say no, then what have you lost?
Very good. Don't take it personally.
Yeah, it's
don't
not a big
overthink
deal.
it.
And someone like that, they are going to be really busy. So if they say no, it's really not your, it's not because you've asked the wrong question or asked it in the wrong way necessarily. It's that they are really busy. And since I was helped myself, I've tried my very best to meet and help other students who've asked me along the way, for advice or anything that I can help with. I think that's the cycle, isn't it?
Paying it forward. Very good.
Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode and want to hear more exciting and informative chats about design and architecture, then don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. Anyway, back to the episode.
You're a product designer with Tom Dixon. For anybody listening that thinks, actually, that's quite an interesting sector of the design world, I haven't thought about that. What value does a consultant offer?
I think my particular area of interest and expertise, I suppose, is really not in design. It's in the business side of it. And I think there are different parts to being a consultant and adding value. And one part of it is knowing more than your client does. Otherwise, you are not able to offer them value for your, the time that you're charging them for. So you've got to know more and add value to whatever it is that's their particular challenge. I think the other part of it.
So you're solving business challenges for them?
Often, yes, that is very much the case.
And what's an example of a business challenge that you could be solving for them?
Well, where I'm working at the moment on the design district, one of the key challenges that we had right at the very beginning of the project was really trying to understand how we could make the design district interesting and accessible for small creative businesses. And I think really a good consultant asks a lot of questions and does a lot of listening. And really when you spend a lot of time listening, asking, eventually the solutions will reveal themselves. You cannot come in with assumptions or preconceptions around what you think the answer is and what you would like the solution to be.
Excellent. Active listening.
Yeah.
Love that. Which brings us nicely onto the design district.
It does.
The project that you're working on at the moment. So you're a consultant for a product designer, and now you're a consultant for a developer.
Yes, exactly. A property developer.
Same skills, different?
Probably. I mean, don't we all carry the same skills into most of our jobs, I think? You become good at something because your particular skill set is applicable to the next thing, I suppose. But the early parts of that project were very much about asking a lot of questions and listening to the different parts of the business. And then the next phase was unpicking the business plan that had been assumed up until that point, and then rebuilding it with the correct assumptions, what we thought would be the correct assumptions.
Before we talk about that, do you want to tell us a little bit about the project then?
Absolutely. So the Design District is a new development in the heart of Greenwich Peninsula. Greenwich Peninsula is an absolutely enormous patch of London, which is where the O2 is. That's the most kind of notable part of it at the moment. Greenwich Peninsula is being developed by Night Dragon, who will eventually be building 17,000 homes on the peninsula. And the Design District is actually a really small part of that bigger development. It's a smallish plot, but it's a really important one. It's right next to the tube station and very close to the O2. And it was conceived as, and is has been built, is a permanent home or workspace for the creative industries. So we have lots of little spaces that are tenanted by small creative businesses. It's set over 16 different buildings, designed by 8 different architects. So it looks absolutely extraordinary. There's very, very different architectural styles and lots of different spaces. And we have, I think we were trying to do a count recently. I think we're in excess of 150 different businesses, ranging from one-person businesses all the way up to, I think our largest business is about 50 employees or more.
So the project's live already?
It is live. We launched 1 year ago, so in September 21, and we've got one building left to complete, but basically everything else is built. The lights are on, the people are in.
Now this is an exciting concept. So we talked a little bit before, and one of my favourite places in London is Lots Road.
Yes.
Because of the energy that's brought about, because of all the interior design ateliers around. And I think what you're sharing, this design centre, is just a bigger concept than like the Lots Road of London.
Yeah, so we've got a really wide range of businesses there. So we follow the DCMS definition of the creative industries, and that means we've got everything from architects and interior designers, rug companies, but we also have other stuff, like we have a shoe design studio and a company that makes cycle accessories, bags and so on. We have a gallery space and a dance company, so it's a really, really broad mix. But absolutely, that thing about the Lots Road, we were talking about having a real point of interest at the heart of a patch of London is what really helps to give it identity. So it was really important from Night Dragon's point of view to have somewhere that's very real and does a real job and is a point of interest for people who don't work in that environment. So, following the Lots Road example, it's one of the most interesting things in that patch of Chelsea, I suppose you would call it.
Yeah,
around there, wouldn't
the
you?
design centre.
Yeah. And the design district, I mean, it's still very much in early phases, but it will absolutely remain that really interesting point of interest for the wider peninsula development.
What specifically makes it desirable for the creative industry to rent, to buy into?
I think there's probably a couple of different parts to that. One is absolutely financial. I'm not going to deny that. Making sure that the rents remain completely accessible to the creative industries. Creative industries do not earn as much as the finance sector or legal sector or some of the other kind of industries that we are home to in London. So ensuring that the rents remain accessible to those businesses. But beyond that, it's also about having that much bigger community of creative businesses right around you. And what we're seeing happen now, with help from our team, but it's absolutely happening, is that thing of these businesses coming together and forging opportunities together. So they're able to expand their own networks, but also opportunities and therefore revenue through partnering with other businesses inside the district.
Oh, lovely. So you're creating a community, like a network.
Yeah.
Very good. Lovely. For anybody, for anyone that is identifying that they feel very creative, but much less business savvy, have you got any tips and tricks or resources?
Yeah, I do. I think I always try and encourage my clients to think about the 3 different areas of their business outside of design. And that is the people. So have you got the right people doing the right jobs? Because quite often it's easy to make an assumption a long time ago around what you needed and then just stick with that and not really question whether or not that's still the right approach. I also encourage them to think about productivity. So are your margins right? Are you over-servicing or under-servicing? Are you under-delivering? Are you, producing the right quality and level of work for your clients at the right price? And then the last piece is really about the kind of the brand part. So thinking more about the future, what the future of your brand and your business will look like, where you need it to be, and then how you use all of the other elements to get there.
So it's valuable service. There's lots of different caps you're wearing. You're wearing a marketing cap, you're wearing a finance cap, and also a sales cap as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say these are mostly smaller businesses. So typically you're not dealing with, absolutely colossal amounts of money or really complicated financial systems. But also, to have a really clear point of view on marketing, you need to understand the sales and vice versa. And to be able to get the best out of the marketing and the sales, you need to know that you're servicing it properly. So I think they're all really connected. The only bit that I can't do, and I think it's completely amazing people do it so well, is the design part of it. It's extraordinary.
And I want to ask you about the architects that were chosen. There are 9 architects as part of your project in Greenwich?
That's correct, yes.
How were they selected?
So it was a sort of, I wasn't actually working on the project at that time. I wish I had been, because I think it would have been such an exciting moment to be on it. But lots of different people were approached for recommendations, and actually a really long list of practices was pulled together. But what Night Dragon were looking for in those architecture practices was smaller businesses. They wanted it to be an opportunity for these practices to potentially have their first built building or their first building in the UK, for practices who would have an approach that was aesthetically identifiable, so that when you put it in the mix of the other buildings, you could have a go at trying to guess who had designed which ones. And practices that would bring an approach which would speak volumes to the end user. So knowing that a creative business is going to go into that building, it's got to be a totally fantastic looking building, because there are lots of other buildings in London that they could go into that do a good enough job. So it's quite stiff competition out there already.
Which is your favourite?
I'm not answering that question.
I'm interested about the personalities of the people that you work with. So you mentioned Tom Dixon, and then you mentioned the developer that you're working with at the moment, Night Dragon, and I'm interested in how any skills or techniques that you have to manage different personalities.
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't. I'm probably using some, and I'm not sure I've necessarily really identified them. I suppose the listening skill is definitely one that I've carried with me throughout. And listening and questioning, I think, gives people confidence that what they are trying to communicate and therefore trying to deliver at that very top level is being understood. So I guess that's probably one of the things that I've carried through in all of my different roles that I've had throughout my career. And actually, I feel like I probably use that when I meet, prospective clients or other, notable people in the industry. If you ask a lot of questions and listen really carefully, most people tend to value that conversation, but you get to retain an awful lot as well in the process.
Yeah. It's a useful technique.
I think so.
It's a very useful technique, yeah.
Have you read this month's issue of Designer magazine yet? Available in digital and print editions, Designer magazine keeps you updated on the world of design and architecture. Get your free trade subscription today at designerarty.co.uk.
One of the guests I was interviewing before, Kia Stanford, she has just done a public speaking course, but it's called presence training.
Ooh.
And the technique is different. It's the original technique is to learn how to talk in a certain way. And this new way of public speaking is actually to listen, to anticipate how you feel in order to deliver the perfect message to your clients.
That's interesting.
Presence speaking.
That is interesting.
So using a different technique,
yeah,
like we're talking about. Did that make any sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I old school terms, I'd probably call that something like reading the room. Or,
yeah.
It's just sort of trying to understand without even asking any questions, actually, what people are experiencing of the environment that they're in.
Which I guess is a useful skill for a consultant who needs to identify actually what is the problem that I'm trying to solve here.
Yes, and you would not believe how many times I've gone into businesses, usually quite small businesses actually, which is almost more terrifying, and found that one of the main issues is the people who are right at the core of it.
Yeah.
There's a personality that's causing a lot of friction in the top levels of the company, or one person's got a particular dream or aspiration that nobody else buys into, and simply the communication and the way that group of people do or don't express themselves to each other is can often be one of the kind of core problems with a business.
And is that something you would advise on? Personality? Recalibration.
Quite often, when that has come up, often what I've ended up doing is actually recommending that they get an expert in. It's sort of HR coaching, business mentoring, that kind of thing. And I think that actually I can identify that needs to be done, but I'm absolutely not qualified to do that. And I think there are some really talented and brilliant people out there who would do a much better job of unpicking that and helping to reform those relationships.
But that in itself, your skill in itself of identifying the kind of prickle in the blackberry bush is a skill in itself.
Yeah,
to raise awareness.
I think it probably is. And the interesting thing about it is when that has come up and, you sort of tentatively broach the subject with the person who's brought you in to do the consultancy, they'll know it's there. They just haven't, either they've not quite put their finger on it, or they're not willing to admit it because it's too painful, it's too potentially damaging and integral to the business that they can't quite bring themselves to admit it. But often there is a solution. There's a way that these things can get solved. And I can't think of a time, certainly when I've worked with creative businesses, where that's been something that's fundamentally pulled the whole thing apart.
What do you love and enjoy most about your job?
I think the thing I'm loving the most right now about being at the Design District is being around all of these totally brilliant creative businesses. There's so many just excellently talented people doing really remarkable things that it gives me great joy and pleasure to see what they're doing, and the fact that they want to do that at the Design District, I think, is really great.
And we mustn't forget there's other models in the world who have tried to copy what you're doing, I guess. We've got a Design District in Miami and Dubai.
Yes, that's right. So they've been around for a while, actually, both of those. And our Design District hasn't been around that long. But I do think they do a slightly different job. So
how so?
Well, Miami Design District is probably a little bit more commercial, in that there's quite a lot of showroom spaces, and there's retail and kind of other parts to it.
How is Greenwich different or similar to Miami and Dubai Design Centre?
So I think Miami is probably a bit more commercial, in that there are quite a lot of showrooms and there's a bit of retail and so on. And Dubai, purpose-built like ours, but with quite a heavy hand from local government and a slightly different remit. And our Design District, I think, really was very much responding to the fact that there's just not enough space for small creative businesses, which is well designed and at a price that they can afford.
So let me understand the concept. Within the buildings, are these similar to serviced offices, so we can rent desks and spaces?
Yes and no. So in a number of buildings, we've got small studio spaces, and they will come as an empty shell, really. So you'll get the key to open the front door, but then it's over to you to bring in your furniture, your equipment. We have a lot of people who've got a lot of equipment, so they'll take those spaces. And then we also have in the Design District Bureau, which is our co-working space. And that very much is, you pay a membership fee, you turn up, and you have a beautiful environment to work from, which could be a desk space from any number of floors. We've also got a fantastic restaurant inside Bureau, and then lots of event spaces and so on. So there's a real mixture of different offers there. And there's also a big range of prices. So Bureau membership starts at £125 a month, so it's very affordable. Entry point into the district, you get access to that whole community, as well as a great big events program, health and well-being, yoga lessons, and all sorts of other stuff. So it's a really great offer, I think.
Sounds like one of those fancy apartments in the USA.
Yeah, I think
in Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
It feels quite a lot like that. We've got beautiful buildings that are inside as well, so it's a very nice environment to work from.
If you could pick one of the buildings, which would be your favourite? And why?
And why? I think we've got very odd naming and numbering systems. We have a building that's called D2, and it's this little diamond-shaped building. It's our smallest building, and I think I really love it because on the outside it's like a peacock. It's got this kind of oily appearance to the facade in terms of the colours, and it changes colour throughout the day and the year. And then when you go inside, it's very, very natural. It's almost like being in a wood. It's a timber frame building. There's loads of exposed timber, and it smells great. So
that's appealing to all of my senses.
Yeah.
So if you could take your business skills and solve any design related problem in the industry at the moment, what do you fancy?
What do I fancy? I mean, I think probably what I feel like I really need to get under the bonnet of next is sustainability, and trying to work out how. Well, there's different. I mean, it's absolutely enormous, the sustainability topic, right? We need to be doing stuff all the way from government level right down to personal choices. But I would love to think that there would be an interesting way to get big businesses in the creative industries who have been established quite a long time to think more sustainably about their output, whatever that might be.
Have you got any ideas, any suggestions? Other than your dissertation?
Yeah. Picking up furniture off the streets. I don't know. I mean, it's really difficult. It's a difficult one. It's kind of personal choices on a day-to-day basis all the way through to.
There's different ways to look at it. There's changes that can be made from the supply base. There's changes that can be made in the design industry ourselves, and also there's changes that can be made on the consumer level.
Yes, exactly.
Pick one of the three.
I think the interesting part of that is that you will find that a creative business will sit in the middle of both of those. So a creative business can influence the consumer's choice in the same way that it can influence how a factory chooses to make something. So
very good.
You can, it's easy for all of us to go, I can't, it's too difficult, it's too complicated,
too expensive.
Too expensive. I don't have the knowledge and the expertise. But actually, with if you were to change the tone of the conversation that you were having with the supplier or the manufacturer of the product,
Helen, you need to be having these conversations.
Maybe that's the next project. Who knows? But
what is the conversation then? Sum it up. What is that conversation?
I think it has to be along the lines of how can we do this together? What is it? You interrogate the manufacturing process and the materials and the wastage and the quality control and where the waste goes and how it could be reused for something else, all the way through to the shipping, and then convince the consumer at the other end that this is the best possible product, not just for its sustainable credentials, but because it's a totally fantastic product.
That's a business right there. That is what's needed for the environment. How can we do this together by Helen? And which makes complete sense, because your whole business model is about collaborating with suppliers, with product designers, with developers.
Yeah, exactly. I think the interesting thing that's happening is that certainly in the world of property development in London right now, the sustainability question is absolutely at the centre of every single decision that's getting made. It doesn't mean that the right decision gets made all the time, but it's really there. It's very much on the table in the world of property development, and that's so encouraging, because it means that it's gone from being something where the architect might have suggested it to being something where the person who is paying to get the building built is demanding it, and that will have an absolutely enormous positive impact on the carbon life cycle and consumption of the buildings that are getting built. So it's all going in the right direction. It would be great if it would go a bit quicker.
And a lot of what you're talking about is centred around us all taking responsibility, as opposed to actually being inspired to do it because actually I feel a bit guilty or shame-filled because they're doing it and I'm not.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's exactly it. And and whilst the ideal scenario is that the government legislates on everything, if you can make personal choices that could have a more positive impact, then why not do it?
Next project, what is it? Where are you at?
Oh, I'm not sure. Well, the sustainability thing is something that keeps coming up in my mind, and I can see that there's big progress happening in the world of property development. I wonder how far down the chain that would go. So thinking about architecture practices, thinking very sustainably in terms of the materials they're choosing and the life cycle of the buildings and the embodied carbon and so on. But what about the next step? What about the interior designers? What about the product designers who are being specified by the interior designers and so on? So maybe something in that world.
You're taking responsibility, aren't you?
I hope so.
And creating a community. Love it. Helen, thank you. It's our pleasure to have you, and thanks for bringing this beautiful book.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. If you've loved today's podcast as much as I have, please like and subscribe. And I'm going to be here every Monday morning with more fabulous guests. See you then.